Hey, it's Bina. Today I want to be talking about fairies. If you have noticed, around the world, from different countries, everybody seems to know about fairies. The telltale stories about fairies, whether it's superstition or it's the fiction that they created to pass time back in the day. So, going from places like Ireland, they have their own type of stories about their fairies, going all the way to the islands where I would say in Haiti we have a different type of description about fairies. So the first time I've been introduced about fairies would be Peter Pan. Peter Pan, about a lost boy that's from Neverland that usually come pick up kids to go live in Neverland and to never grow up. And there you meet Tinkerbell. Growing up, I knew fairies from Tinkerbell. And Tinkerbell usually was like a frisky little character. Even though Tinkerbell was a tricky little fairy, the only person she was loyal to was Peter Pan. So she usually would look after Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. But when it comes to people like Hook or Wendy, she have a certain hatred for them and would act a certain different way. She would act more sneaky or more trickery. Most stories I've heard, that most of them say that fairies are very not things you should trust, and they mostly live in places like gardens. I've heard stories about that there's many different type of fairies, like there's house fairies and there's garden fairies, all serve a different purpose. And that, if you watch the original, there's an original Tinkerbell movie where Tinkerbell is born, and then there's many different fairies, and they serve a different purpose to the earth, to the environment. And that movie mostly showing that fairies are good creatures, good, helpful creatures. But stories I've heard are completely opposite from them. Like the Grimm, if you heard about the Grimm stories are always gruesome. Even though Disney have transformed most of the stories from Grimm into it having a happy ending. So most happy endings we know from Disney come from Grimm. So they showcase fairies as trickeries, not to be trusted, just as the real stories that goes around about fairies. And to be able to work with fairies, especially witches who wants to work with fairies, you need to know, when you're saying things, you need to know how you're saying it. So you can't you need to make sure the things that you want, you offer them something, and you ask for something back. You have to be very specific about what you want, or they're gonna use your words against you, and they're gonna give you something that you definitely did not want. There's also been going around that fairies cannot lie, and because of the fact that they can't lie, they have become very good at using language, meaning you have to listen to the way they say stuff, how they respond. If you ever be able to talk to one, which who knows, maybe it is possible, because I've never socialized with a fairy, so I wouldn't know. So yeah, to be able to work with a fairy, you need to be smart enough not to fall for the trickery, and to be able to learn how to work with them. You can't just out of nowhere choose to, I'm gonna try to communicate with fairies, because that's where you're gonna go wrong. So that's why it's better to do more research about it. There's many videos out there on YouTube you can find that is around fairies, or you could also go on places like other website where there's group of people, group chats where they talk about working with fairies. You could also do that before actually starting the process of working with them. So now I'm gonna say, now I told you all everything I know about fairies, what I've gotten from about fairies. Now I'm gonna tell you my own experience, how in my culture, what I've been close to about. So you guys have heard about the tooth fairy. The tooth fairy, which you put when a child loses their tooth, they will usually put the tooth under their pillow. And then once they wake up in the morning, they will find money under the pillow instead of the tooth. So that's the American version, I believe. I don't know if every other culture out there has the same type of version about, tooth fairies. But for me, I grew up with a different type. For me, when I was growing up as a little kid, whenever I had a tooth, instead of putting it under my pillow, my family would tell me to throw it up on the roof instead. So I would like wish for something. They tell me to wish for something. Then I would throw the tooth up the rooftop of my house, and that's how we traded, ask for things from fairies. Back then, I didn't know I was technically talking to a tooth fairy until later once I found out about tooth fairies. Then I realized it's technically the same thing. I'm trading my tooth for a wish by throwing it up over my rooftop of my house, while other kids in America mostly would put it under the pillow instead. Whether me throwing it up the roof technically means I'm working with garden fairies, and people that do putting it under the pillow is probably working with house fairies. Who knows? It could be that. So that's my experience with the whole suspicion about fairies, about telltales about fairies, is that with tooth fairies. And I believe most people has that. Most people, that's how they know about fairies, is by the tooth fairy. And also, going back, I also heard, this is another thing I've also heard about fairies, that if you go out in your garden and you see a circle made out of, on your garden, a circle made out of rocks and stuff like that, or type of like flowers, I've heard that you shouldn't, one thing you shouldn't do is go in it, because once you go in it, they could snatch you up or something, or you could go to a different type of world, different reality or something. That's what I heard, not to go in it or they'll trap you. That's how they trap you in their little, and that's how they will steal you. You get stolen. So that's what I heard. If you see weird type of circles in your garden made out of rocks and flowers, or just flowers, don't go into it, because that's you falling into a trap. Anyway, if you have your own stories about fairies, associations with fairies, please tell me in the comments below. I do read all comments, so please tell me. I would love to know about it. And yeah, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.